I was just an innocent young man, yet women kept deceiving me. Take what was happening right now, for example. I stood outside the private room, not quite knowing what to do, because I had just heard with my own ears that the girlfriend I had been dating for a year had only been playing with my feelings. She had approached me solely because of a bet she had made with her wealthy fiancé, young Master Ito. I was utterly heartbroken. I wanted nothing more than to storm inside and flip the table on the spot. But I could not do it. I truly could not bring myself to do anything that might hurt a woman. Besides, if I fell out with her, where else would I find a gorgeous, rich girlfriend who was willing to spend money on me? I could not help sighing to myself. Young Master Ito truly was vicious. Just to toy with me, he had actually devised such a cruel scheme. Still, Willow and I were not exactly having a platonic relationship. We had been living together off campus for the past 6 months. Well, this was awkward. Did young Master Ito have some kind of unusual kink sigh? As expected, the world of the rich was beyond my understanding. Whatever. There was no point in thinking too much about it. I would just keep playing dumb and take it one day and one lay at a time. When it came to suffering in silence while screwing in secret, no man in history could compare to me. Chapter 1. A phone call from my advisor threw all my plans into disarray. By the time I arrived at the upscale private club, I was already half an hour late. When I reached the private room, I saw that the door had been left slightly ajar. I had just raised my hand to push it open when the conversation inside stopped me cold. George, he's all right, I guess. Pretty easy to manipulate. If I give him the cold shoulder for a few more days, he'll probably be completely hooked on me. It was Willow's voice. My girlfriend of 1 year. A man chuckled softly right after her. Makoto Ito, a notoriously wealthy playboy in their social circle. He was also Willow's childhood friend. You're moving way too slowly, he said. You're a wealthy heiress, yet it's taking you this long to conquer some poor nobody. Don't forget our bet. Whoever turns their target into an obedient lapdog first wins. And if you lose, you'll have to follow my rules when you give your speech at our engagement party. Willow rolled her eyes. Worry about yourself. Have you managed to win over Anna yet? That icy campus belle is completely immune to your charms. Standing outside the door, I sucked in a sharp breath. Our year-long relationship? It turned out to be nothing more than a dull hunting game between two rich heirs who were engaged to each other. I would be lying if I said it did not hurt at all. But that feeling lasted for less than 10 seconds before my mind began racing. The question now was, should I go in or not? What a hassle. According to the usual script, I should have kicked the door open right then. I should have confronted them at the top of my lungs, thrown wine in their faces, and stormed away in heartbreak. Then I could begin my journey as the tormented male lead in some melodramatic romance novel, wallowing in self-pity for the rest of my life. But I was a normal person. I did not live in a novel. So I did a quick cost-benefit analysis. If I went in now and openly confronted them, where else would I ever find a girlfriend this beautiful, this rich, and this willing to spend money on me? Just last month, she had bought me a top-of-the-line laptop, which I was currently using to process the core data for my project. Next week, she was also taking me to an exclusive closed-door industry forum. It would be packed with powerful connections I would never normally have access to. Was I really supposed to throw away all those tangible resources for something as vague and unreliable as true love? That would be a terrible deal. If she did not regard our relationship as real, why should I cast myself as the victim? And when I thought about it, Makoto was one hell of a stupid person too. What kind of pathetic cuck sends his own fiancé off to date another man just to win some stupid bet? He certainly wore his horns with style. After all, Willow and I were hardly in a platonic relationship. We had even rented an apartment together off campus. Wait, who had Makoto just said he was trying to win over Anna, so Makoto had a target too? I didn't expect you to take it so calmly. A cool female voice suddenly came from the dimly lit emergency stairwell beside me. I turned my head. A girl stepped out of the shadows. She wore a white shirt, her hair pulled into a high ponytail. Her eyes were as still and lifeless as stagnant water. There was not the slightest trace of anger at being deceived. It was Anna, the famously untouchable ice queen of our university. And the other target in this twisted game. Chapter 2, Anna and I exchanged a glance. In the dim light of the hallway, we saw the same things reflected in each other's eyes, clarity calculation, and a hint of mocking amusement. Clearly, this aloof campus belle was no innocent prey either. Since we both had plans of our own, there was no need to expose the truth so abruptly. After all, the stage had already been set. If we did not make the performance convincing, how could we give our generous sponsors their money's worth? I took 2 steps back and deliberately made my footsteps louder. At the same time, I pulled out my phone and called Willow. "Hey, Willow. I just got out of the elevator. Which room are you in?" My voice was gentle, carrying just the right amount of apology. Over the phone, Willow instantly switched into sweet girlfriend mode. She put on a sugary voice and said, "We're in V8. Hurry up, everyone's waiting for you." After I hung up, Anna looked at me, the corner of her mouth lifting almost imperceptibly. Then she put her usual cool, distant expression back on. I pushed open the door. The atmosphere inside had already transitioned seamlessly into one of cheerful camaraderie. Willow came over with a bright smile and naturally linked her arm through mine. Meanwhile, Makoto sat in the center of the sofa with a wine glass in hand, playing the part of a refined young gentleman. His eyes, however, were fixed intently on Anna behind me. It was obvious that Willow and I were much further along than they were. After all, Makoto was still trying to melt his Ice Queen's heart. Willow and I had already spent more nights together at our off-campus apartment than I could count. I let Willow pull me over to the sofa. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at Makoto sitting opposite us. He was watching me with an amused, knowing smile. His eyes were filled with the condescension of someone who believed himself far above me. What was this cuck so smug about? Was he secretly getting off on this fine? So he enjoyed being cuckolded. Helping others had always been one of my finest qualities. I casually wrapped an arm around Willow's waist and pulled her closer. Then I leaned toward her ear and whispered loudly enough for the entire room to hear. "What perfume are you wearing today? You smell incredible." With that, I gave her a perfectly natural kiss on the cheek. Willow's body stiffened almost imperceptibly, but she quickly relaxed again. She obediently leaned against my shoulder and playfully thumped me on the chest. She could hardly reject me. After all, when we were alone, we had done things far more intimate than this. But I clearly saw Makoto's fingers tighten sharply around his wine glass. Even a vein at his temple twitched. Seriously? He had volunteered to wear the horns, and now he was upset that they pinched Anna quietly, observed the entire scene from beside us. She was smart enough to see through my mischievous little game immediately. The corner of her mouth curved upward. Then for once, she voluntarily picked up a glass of wine and sat down beside Makoto. "Makoto," she said. Her voice remained cool, but it lacked some of the wariness that usually kept everyone at arm's length. "The laboratory project you referred me to passed its preliminary review. I'd like to propose a toast to thank you." That tiny step toward him was an unprecedented breakthrough for the famously untouchable Ice Queen. Makoto's attention instantly snapped back to her. A flash of ecstasy and smug triumph crossed his eyes. The lackeys around him who knew about the bet immediately began to cheer. "Whoa, young Master Ito, you've got some serious game." Anna never drinks yet, she's actually proposing a toast. "To you today. Now that's an honor." Amid all the cheering and flattery, Makoto raised his glass with obvious satisfaction and clinked it against Anna's. The way he looked at her was as though she were a trophy that would soon belong to him. He probably believed he already had this bet in the bag. I leaned back against the sofa, idly playing with Willow's fingers as I watched the absurd yet strangely harmonious scene before me. Only one thought crossed my mind. These two rich heirs truly were fools with more money than sense. Chapter 3. After the party ended, Willow and I returned to our upscale off-campus apartment. I was especially intense that night. Willow seemed surprised by how assertive and proactive I was, but she soon melted beneath me and surrendered completely. We kept at it until well past midnight. By the end, she was so exhausted that she did not even want to move a finger. Without bothering to shower, she collapsed face down on the pillow and fell into a deep sleep. I took a shower, slipped on a robe, and walked out onto the balcony. The cool night breeze dispersed the lingering heat in my body. Leaning against the railing, I glanced back at Willow sleeping soundly on the large bed. Honestly, if I had not overheard that conversation outside the private room tonight, I really would have cherished her for the rest of my life. After all, I came from an ordinary family. My parents ran a small business in a modest county town. I had only managed to get into this prestigious university by spending all 3 years of high school grinding through one practice exam after another. Willow, on the other hand, had been born a wealthy heiress adored by everyone around her. Willow and I had never belonged to the same world. If she had not barged into my life and pursued me first, I probably would not have dared imagine being with her even in my dreams. She was radiant, bold, and passionate. She made gifts for me herself, and took me to restaurants I would never have been willing to spend money on. As the saying went, when a woman made the first move, a man's defenses rarely lasted long. My heart was not made of stone. When a beautiful, wealthy heiress pursued you with eyes only for you, it would take a superhuman amount of self-control to resist her. Besides, she was usually gentle and considerate without any of the temper or entitlement one might expect from a spoiled heiress. So naturally, we ended up together. I began planning our future. I thought about how hard I would have to work and what I would need to accomplish to become worthy of her. I never imagined that she had approached me with a clear objective from the very beginning. Our entire relationship was nothing more than a bet between wealthy heirs looking for a way to relieve their boredom. Thinking back on it now, however, there had been signs. Over the past year, I had occasionally noticed Willow and Makoto acting unusually close. At gatherings within their social circle, they also habitually sat beside each other. I had asked her about it once. Willow had been nestled in my arms when she casually replied, "Makoto, we're just childhood friends. Our families have always been close. Don't tell me you're jealous." I believed her. After all, I knew nothing about how wealthy social circles worked, and I did not want to interfere too much. I never expected that they were more than childhood friends. They were actually engaged. I looked away from Willow and gazed down at the dazzling cityscape below, smiling silently to myself. I genuinely could not understand how young Master Ito's mind worked. Just to win some ridiculous game, he had let his own fiancé date another man for an entire year. He had even tolerated her living with that man off campus. I had to admit his open-mindedness was truly impressive. I suppose one man's poison really was another man's honey. Still, I savored the memory of what had just happened in bed. Since the two of them enjoyed playing games so much, I saw no reason to hold back. Chapter 4. Early the next morning, I was in the kitchen frying eggs and bacon. I did not particularly enjoy eating either of them, but Willow did so. I had learned how to make them. I really had loved her sincerely. Willow emerged from the bedroom barefoot, wearing an oversized men's shirt. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and rubbed her cheek against my back like a clingy cat, her movements carrying the lazy intimacy of someone who had just woken up. "Something smells amazing, boyfriend," she murmured. I turned off the stove, turned around, and lifted her onto the kitchen island. Giving her cheek a casual pinch, I said, "Go wash up. Breakfast is almost ready." Everything felt as natural as if we were a real couple, deeply in love and living together. While we were eating, Willow's phone vibrated on the table. She picked it up and glanced at the screen. The smile in her eyes immediately changed. The message appeared to be from Makoto. Biting her lip, she turned the screen toward me. "George, look." It showed Makoto's latest social media post. In the photo, Makoto and Anna stood side by side. The suggestive caption read, "Finally you." The comments below were filled with cheers and congratulations from their wealthy friends. The two of them had made their relationship official. I widened my eyes at just the right moment, putting on an extremely surprised expression. "Looks like quite a lot happened last night," I remarked. Willow pursed her lips, a faint trace of resentment slipping into her voice. "Yeah, I guess the Ice Queen finally melted." Seeing her frustration, I knew exactly what Anna was doing. She was afraid Makoto would become discouraged if he thought he was making no progress, so she had given him a taste of success at just the right moment. After all, if she wanted him to keep willingly pouring resources into her, she had to give him some positive reinforcement. As far as Willow and Makoto knew, they were now neck and neck in their little hunting game. Sure enough, Willow's competitive streak instantly flared up. She put down her glass and grabbed my hand. "George, come shopping with me after breakfast. A few new designer bags just arrived at the shopping district. I want to take a look and buy you some new outfits while we're there." I frowned slightly and pretended to resist. "You don't have to buy me any clothes. I already have more than enough. Besides, you only bought me that expensive laptop last month. I can't keep spending your money like this." In the past, I truly had felt guilty about spending her money. I would even live as frugally as possible and work part-time during the holidays, saving up, so I could find an opportunity to give her a gift of similar value. But after overhearing her conversation with Makoto, I finally understood that their entire plan was to control me through that sense of indebtedness. She would keep spending money on me until I felt that I owed her far too much. Then even if she made an outrageous demand, I would accept it without question. I might even willingly get a vasectomy in the name of love. Sure enough, Willow raised an eyebrow and snorted, "If I tell you to come, then come. What's wrong with spending money on my boyfriend?" She leaned closer and wrapped her arms around my neck, sounding half coquettish and half threatening. "You keep turning me down. Does that mean you don't love me anymore? Watching her work so hard to play the devoted girlfriend just to win her bet? I sighed helplessly and ruffled her hair. Yes, I love you. Happy now, we'll do whatever you want. Only then did Willow smile in satisfaction. She immediately headed toward the walk-in closet to choose an outfit preparing for a major shopping spree. Meanwhile, I remained at the dining table and leisurely finished the last sip of my milk. On the surface, I looked deeply embarrassed and overwhelmed with guilt. Inside, I was already grinning from ear to ear. She wanted to splurge at an upscale mall, fine by me. Thank you for your generosity, boss. Chapter 5. When we arrived at the mall, we ran straight into the last people I expected to see. Then again, perhaps this was not a coincidence at all, but some unspoken agreement between Willow and Makoto. We encountered them face to face in the VIP section of a luxury boutique. Makoto was dressed in a bespoke suit, standing calmly before a display case. Anna stood beside him, still wearing her usual simple, understated outfit. The only addition was a pair of glittering camellia-shaped earrings. Well, what a coincidence! Makoto raised a hand in greeting. His gaze swept over Willow's fingers intertwined with mine, and a provocative smile curved his lips. Willow, are you here to spoil your boyfriend? Willow snorted and raised her chin like a proud swan. She rolled her eyes.
Why did young Master Ito reserve the entire store? Do I need your permission to buy something with my boyfriend? The air was instantly filled with invisible sparks.
On the surface, they were merely greeting each other. In reality, they were showing off how much progress they had made with their respective targets. Makoto chuckled before turning toward Anna with a tender expression. Anna, that emerald necklace we saw earlier would look beautiful against your collarbone. Let's take it. Consider it a gift to celebrate your award. The necklace had a price tag of $600,000. Refusing to be outdone, Willow pulled me toward the display case containing the most expensive pieces. She pointed at a Vacheron Constantin watch priced at $800,000. Take that one out. I want my boyfriend to try it on. Good grief. Had this turned into an arms race, I looked toward Anna. She frowned slightly and pretended to be uncomfortable in such an extravagant setting. Lightly biting her lower lip, she said, Makoto, it's far too expensive. I can't accept it. Makoto immediately placed his hands on her shoulders and gazed at her affectionately. You don't have to be so reserved with me. What's mine is yours. Absolutely brilliant. The finesse of that push and pull, the perfectly measured coy reluctance. Anna's talents were wasted outside the acting profession. Of course, I could not allow myself to be outdone either. I looked at the heavy watch around my wrist with a deep frown and reached to undo the clasp. Willow, this watch is too flashy. It doesn't suit me. I appreciate the thought, but you really shouldn't spend this much money. Willow immediately pressed down on my hand. A flash of irritation at being rejected crossed her eyes, but her determination not to lose to Makoto was even stronger. What do you mean it doesn't suit you? She demanded. Willow's boyfriend deserves nothing but the best. Charge it to my card. She decisively slapped her black card onto the counter. Makoto refused to be outdone. He told the sales associate to put the necklace on Anna and paid for it along with several limited edition handbags they had looked at earlier. While waiting for the sales associates to package everything, Willow and Makoto each held a glass of champagne and waged a silent war with their eyes. Meanwhile, Anna and I stood 2 counters apart. Our gazes met in midair for a brief second. She lowered her eyes, the corner of her mouth twitching almost imperceptibly. I hurriedly picked up the glass of lemon water on the table and took a sip. Using the glass as cover, I forcibly suppressed the laughter threatening to escape. Damn, staying in character was seriously difficult. These 2 self-proclaimed apex predators were spending outrageous amounts of money on us just to prove who was better at taming their prey. Willow believed she had won. After all, I had eventually given in and accepted the watch, gazing at her with eyes supposedly filled with gratitude and guilt. Makoto believed he had won too. The aloof and untouchable campus belle had finally put on the necklace he had bought her, lowering her head like a shy young woman moved by his affection. They were both secretly reveling in their victories, convinced that their charm and wealth were unmatched. But as Anna and I walked out of the mall carrying armfuls of shopping bags, we shared only one thought. Life was looking more promising by the day. Chapter 6. After returning to the apartment exhausted from shopping, the mood quickly became heated. The chemistry between us ignited, and we did not even make it to the bedroom before getting down to business on the living room sofa. Afterward, Willow lounged in my arms like a lazy cat, her pale fingers tapping away at her phone. A moment later, my phone vibrated several times. I picked it up and saw several messages from her. They contained the digital receipts for the Vacheron Constantin watch and the bespoke outfits she had bought that day. Beneath every receipt were the same clearly written words voluntarily given as a gift. She had probably learned that from those relationship advice videos. According to the women in those videos, every gift given during a relationship should be explicitly labeled as voluntary. But the people promoting that idea were generally the ones being pursued. The entire rule had been created from the recipient's perspective, making it seem natural and justified for them to accept whatever was given. In other words, it had originally been intended to condition other people, only to inevitably condition its advocates as well. I sighed. Willow, is this really necessary? We're in a relationship and building a life together. We're not conducting a business transaction. Why make it so complicated? Willow rested against my shoulder and answered with a serious expression. Because this is pure love. We're obviously never going to break up, but what if we have a big fight someday? It would be ugly to start arguing over money. With everything clearly documented, you can use your gifts without worrying. I had not expected her to go this far just to make me completely lower my guard and willingly surrender to the illusion of devotion she had created. Then again, it made sense. The Liu and Ito families controlled enormous business empires. They probably earned more in a single day than the several $100,000 they had spent today. To them, this minor sunk cost was not even a drop in the ocean. Was that something I needed to worry about? Obviously not. All I had to do was enjoy it. My gaze settled on Willow's profile. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and the corners of her eyes still carried a lingering flush from our earlier workout. The woman in my arms indulged my every wish and gave me anything I asked for. Yet she was going to become that idiot Makoto Ito's wife someday. Suddenly I could understand why some men had a thing for other men's wives. I swept her into my arms. Ignoring her startled cry, I carried her straight into the bathroom. More than an hour later, the sound of running water finally stopped. Willow no longer had the strength to stand, so I carried her back to bed. She remained curled beneath the covers for quite a while before finally hooking an arm around my neck. George, there's a formal dinner for our social circle next Saturday. Will you come with me? She looked at me with anticipation in her eyes. I pulled the blanket over her, lowered my head, and kissed her forehead. My voice was gentle yet reassuring. Of course. Don't worry. I promise I won't disappoint you. Satisfied with my answer, Willow closed her eyes and soon fell into a deep sleep. I leaned against the headboard and stared at the ceiling in the dim light of the bedside lamp. In truth, this was not my first time accompanying her to such an occasion. When we first started dating, I had put a great deal of effort into fitting in with her social circle. I scoured the internet for information learning about wine tasting and formal dining etiquette. I studied the difficult pronunciations of luxury brands and mastered the polished language of high society conversation. Like a sponge, I absorbed every scrap of knowledge I could find, all so that I would not look out of place when standing beside her. As it turned out, I was a remarkably fast learner. After attending several formal dinners, not only had I never embarrassed her, but my polished conversation and broad knowledge had made her look exceptionally good. That was why Willow frequently brought me along to exclusive social events. I used to believe she enjoyed flaunting our relationship because she loved me. Now I understood. She had been putting on a show for Makoto to prove that she was far ahead of him in winning over her target. Since next week's dinner was another gathering of their social circle, Makoto would probably bring Anna along to avoid being outdone, especially after how fiercely they had tried to one-up each other at the mall today. At the thought, I smiled silently. A wealthy young master and heiress would be bringing their respective prey onto the same stage to compete. Well, it looked like Anna and I would have to act our hearts out again. If we were taking their money, the least we could do was give them the full emotional experience. I certainly was not going to leave money on the table just to preserve my pride. Chapter 7. Saturday's formal dinner was held at a private club in City A. By the time Willow and I arrived, Makoto and Anna were already there. Gatherings within their social circle never lacked spectators. I quickly noticed that the wealthy heirs holding champagne around us were looking at Anna and me strangely. Their gazes carried both mockery and condescending pity. Clearly, many of them knew about this so-called hunting game. I could even vaguely hear people placing bets in the corners over which of us would meet the more miserable end. I felt completely unbothered. In fact, I almost wanted to ask what the odds were and whether I could bet on myself. If we were taking their money, we had to give them their money's worth. Anna and I displayed exceptional professionalism throughout the performance. We were gentle, considerate, and attentive, perfectly playing the roles of devoted partners. During the second half of the dinner, Makoto led Anna to the Steinway piano in the center of the hall. The brilliant yet icy academic lowered her eyes slightly. Her fingers began flowing over the keys in a technically demanding Liszt etude. Her playing astonished the entire room. Makoto stood there holding his wine glass, basking in everyone's envious gazes, with his chin raised so high it nearly touched the ceiling. Beside me, Willow unconsciously tightened her grip on my arm. Her competitive spirit was written all over her beautiful face. She turned toward me, her eyes loaded with implication. The corner of my eye twitched. "Come on, lady. Don't look at me." Anna was fighting dirty. How could she suddenly give herself an extra scene and raise the difficulty without warning? I had spent all 3 years of high school grinding through endless college entrance exam papers. I had never even touched a harmonica, let alone learned how to play the piano. Just as I was trying to figure out how to help Willow save face, one of the distinguished guests invited by the host approached us. It was Professor Klaus from the University of Munich, a leading authority in materials science. Naturally, the hosts hurried over to greet him. However, Professor Klaus was an old-fashioned German whose English carried a heavy Bavarian accent. Once the conversation turned to specialized academic terminology, even the interpreter accompanying him began to stumble. The atmosphere was rapidly becoming awkward. I sighed, straightened my tie and suit collar, and calmly stepped forward. "Good evening, Professor Klaus." Perfectly fluent standard German without the slightest foreign accent came from my mouth. Not only did Professor Klaus's eyes light up, but even Willow stared at me in astonishment. I naturally took over the conversation. We began with his recently published paper in Nature on novel nanomaterials, then moved on to his laboratory's data models. The entire conversation was conducted in German. I used technical terminology effortlessly and answered every question with ease. Professor Klaus nodded repeatedly as he listened. He even patted my shoulder excitedly and said he would seek me out the next time he visited our university. The entire hall fell silent. The rich heirs who had been waiting to see me embarrass myself stood frozen with their wine glasses in hand, staring at me with their mouths hanging open. The smug expression on Makoto's face stiffened as well. As for Willow, her eyes practically glowed as she looked at me. Her overflowing vanity had been immensely satisfied. I raised my champagne glass and offered Anna a distant toast beside the piano. After all, unlike her, I had come prepared. Chapter 8. The dinner was drawing to a close. Willow and Makoto appeared to have been summoned by their families. Both of their expressions darkened while answering their phones, and they hurriedly left the venue. In a corner of the banquet hall, Anna and I finally had a chance to speak alone. It was our first real conversation since exchanging that glance outside the private room that night. I walked onto the terrace and had just picked up a glass of champagne when Anna joined me holding a glass of sparkling water. "Looks like you came prepared too," she said calmly while gazing at the distant city lights. I smiled without confirming or denying it. She was right. I had not come merely to enjoy the food and flattery. The elite connections Willow could introduce me to were the real prize. Professor Klaus from the University of Munich had been my primary target tonight. To converse with him fluently for those few minutes, I had studied his most important papers until I practically knew them by heart. "You weren't half bad yourself," I replied. I raised my glass and gently clinked it against hers. I had seen everything clearly during the dinner. Whenever Makoto stepped away to socialize, the icy campus belle had effortlessly struck up conversations with several leading entrepreneurs in the tech industry. Although they had exchanged little more than polite pleasantries, ordinary students like us only needed to get on the radar of such influential figures. That familiarity could become the key to securing top-tier job offers and valuable resources. Anna took a sip of water, her voice perfectly calm. "We're simply taking what we need from them. After all, I spent more than 2 weeks teaching myself the piano for tonight's performance." I nearly choked on my champagne. Turning toward her, I stared as if she were some kind of monster. "Are you even human?" I asked with a wry smile. "You taught yourself for 2 weeks and can already play like that." The corner of Anna's mouth lifted ever so slightly. It was just pattern memorization. I learned it entirely through rote practice. That's the only piece I can play. Incredible. She truly was the ultimate exam-taking machine. She had treated art like a standardized test and solved it with terrifying efficiency. My smile faded as I leaned closer and lowered my voice. "Do you know how much longer this show will last?" Anna shook her head. "I'm not sure. But judging by their expressions when their families called them away, our show may be wrapping up earlier than expected. I nodded and shrugged indifferently. Who cares? We've already gotten nearly all the resources we wanted. As soon as they suggest breaking up, we'll cooperate for one final performance, cry our eyes out, and desperately beg them to stay. Then this whole thing will be over. Anna neither agreed nor disagreed. She merely looked toward the wealthy heirs still drinking and socializing inside the banquet hall. Her eyes were as calm and clear as the night outside. Chapter 9. Meanwhile, in the study of the Ito family estate located in the affluent district of City A, the atmosphere was oppressively tense. Willow and Makoto stood side by side before a large mahogany desk facing the stern elders of both families. There's an auspicious date at the beginning of next month. Hold the engagement banquet then. The head of the Ito family, Makoto Ito's father, held a cigar between his fingers. His tone made it clear that this was an order, not a suggestion. Makoto frowned and instinctively objected. Dad didn't. We agreed to wait until after graduation. This is too rushed. Circumstances have changed, the head of the Liu family replied with a sigh. There have been problems with the renewable energy project our families are jointly developing. Our competitors are aggressively shorting our shares. We urgently need a grand marriage alliance to restore the confidence of the board and our shareholders. There is no room for discussion. We've also heard about the games you two have been playing lately. It's time to settle down. The elders spoke indirectly, but the warning behind their words could not have been clearer. After leaving the study, Willow and Makoto walked to the terrace at the end of the hallway. Neither of them looked pleased. Originally, they had plenty of time to slowly close the net and savor the pleasure of watching their prey struggle in despair. But now their family's command was like a death warrant abruptly bringing their game to an end. Makoto tugged irritably at his tie and slammed a fist against the railing. Damn it! The image of Anna's cool yet breathtaking profile as she played the piano that evening surfaced in his mind. The game ending early meant he would have to break up with her within the next few days. But he knew perfectly well that only the smallest corner of Anna's icy exterior had begun to thaw. If he revealed the truth now, she probably would not shed a single tear. At most, she would look at him coldly before turning around and walking away. What kind of victory was that? The thought left a worse taste in his mouth than swallowing a fly. It appears I've won our bet. Willow leaned against the railing and stared into the dark night, her voice slightly strained. According to the rules of their wager, she had indeed secured her victory. After all, she and George had been together for an entire year. He would wake up early to make her favorite eggs and bacon. Whenever she acted unreasonably, he would compromise with helpless yet affectionate indulgence. He loved her so deeply and depended on her so completely. If she broke up with him tomorrow and told him that everything between them had been a lie, George would surely fall apart. He would probably sob as he demanded to know why. He would cast aside every shred of dignity, drop to his knees, and beg her not to leave. At last she had reached the moment when she could completely crush George's self-respect. And yet, Willow lowered her head and looked at her phone. Half an hour earlier, George had sent her a message. Did you get home safely? Get some rest. Her heart felt as though an invisible hand had closed around it, squeezing so tightly that she could barely breathe. She should have been happy. She should have gone before Makoto like a victorious queen and gloated over her triumph. But in reality, the mere thought of George looking at her with red-rimmed eyes filled with disappointment and anguish made Willow's nose sting with the sudden urge to cry. Chapter 10. Over the next 2 days, the atmosphere in the apartment became strangely tense. Several times Willow sat on the sofa staring at me, looking as though she wanted to say something but could not bring herself to speak. She seemed to be desperately psyching herself up to break up with me, yet she had no idea how to broach the subject. Should she simply say, I deceived you? Our entire relationship was just a game. In her current state, she clearly could not get those words out. I had already noticed her anxiety and inner conflict, but I could hardly add an extra scene myself by suddenly bursting into tears and begging her to love me again. That would look far too fake and unprofessional. The stalemate continued until the third evening. Willow sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at me with reddened eyes. I knew the timing was finally right. It was time for me, her ideal scene partner, to give her a little push. I walked over and gently pulled her into my arms. Resting my chin against her hair, I spoke tenderly with just the right amount of concern. Willow, something has been wrong with you these past few days. Did something happen to your family? Those words opened the floodgates with perfect precision. The emotions Willow had suppressed for days instantly burst free. She buried her face against my chest and nodded through her sobs. Something did happen. Her entire body trembled as she cried. There's a serious problem with my family's renewable energy project and our shares keep falling. My father said the only way to restore the confidence of the shareholders and the board is through a marriage alliance with the Ito family. She raised her tear-streaked face and looked at me, her eyes filled with an almost desperate devotion. George, I love you. I really love you so much, she choked out. But I've enjoyed everything my family has given me since I was a child. I can't selfishly abandon them when they need me most. I don't know what to do. I looked into her tear-filled eyes. For a moment, I was genuinely dazed. Incredible. I never imagined this wealthy heiress's acting skills had already reached such an extraordinary level. Even the unbearable anguish and reluctance in her eyes looked utterly convincing, as though she truly loved me more than anything. Since my scene partner was delivering the performance of her life, I naturally could not fall behind. I drew a deep breath. My eyes immediately turned red as I suppressed the trembling in my voice. Holding her face between my hands, I gazed at her affectionately. Willow, don't cry. Listen to me. I looked directly into her eyes, my voice resolute with the determination of a man willing to sell his last possession to help her through this crisis. I'll sell the watch you gave me along with the clothes and laptop tomorrow. Then I took out a bank card and gave her a bitter smile. This card contains all the money I've saved from my part-time jobs. I originally planned to use it to surprise you on your birthday, but it seems we may not make it to that day. I lowered my eyes toward the card in my hand. I know this money may not even be a drop in the bucket for your family, but it's everything I have right now. Perhaps it can still help a little. Willow froze. She stared blankly at me as tears fell from her eyes in heavy drops. Of course, she knew that this amount of money meant nothing to her family, but she also understood that for a poor student from an ordinary family, being willing to give up everything at a moment like this was a genuine act of selfless support in her darkest hour. The love contained in that gesture was almost suffocating in its weight. Looking at her devastated expression, I gave her a bleak, sorrowful smile. I gently caressed her cheek and wiped away her tears with my thumb. Willow, the truth is, I've always known. We never belonged to the same world. I looked at her and enunciated every word, bringing my performance as the devoted lover to its emotional climax. I love you. That's why I don't want to make this any harder for you. Go home and do what you have to do. I hope that someday you'll be happy. Chapter 11. After delivering that devastating final line, I did not look at her again. I turned away resolutely, took my suitcase from the closet, and began packing. Just as I zipped it shut, Willow suddenly rushed up behind me and wrapped her arms tightly around me. George, don't leave. Please don't leave me. She sobbed uncontrollably, her voice filled with a panic that even she herself had not noticed. It was as though the moment I walked away, she would truly lose something she could never recover. I stopped moving. With my back still turned toward her, I closed my eyes and released a deep sigh. Then I placed my hand over hers. Slowly, one finger at a time, I pried her hands apart. Let go, Willow. My voice was soft, yet filled with unmistakable restraint and reason. You're going to become another man's wife. It wouldn't be right for us to continue like this. I gently freed myself from her embrace without looking back. Picking up my suitcase, I opened the door and walked out of the apartment without turning around. The moment the door closed, I heard Willow break down sobbing inside. Standing in the hallway, I smoothed the hem of my shirt where she had wrinkled it. Then I released a long breath. A flawless final scene. 5 years later. At City International Airport, I emerged from the VIP exit with my suitcase. I immediately spotted the SUV parked by the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Anna in sunglasses and a sharp business suit. She tilted her chin toward me. Get in. I handed my suitcase to the driver, opened the door, and climbed into the back seat. Am I really important enough for a busy executive like you to personally pick me up from the airport? I teased. Anna removed her sunglasses and tossed a thick financial report into my lap. Cut the wisecracks, she said, rolling her eyes. If you can't present the latest proposal for licensing the German technology at tomorrow's board meeting, even I won't be able to save you. I opened the report and smiled knowingly at the impressive revenue figures. Over the past 5 years, Anna and I had not sought comfort in each other's arms and become a couple like the characters in some cliched romance novel. Instead, we became perfectly compatible business partners. After the breakup, I used the connections Willow had introduced me to and successfully secured a recommendation from Professor Klaus at the University of Munich. Meanwhile, Anna used the resources Makoto had given her to establish herself within the most influential business circles. I handled technological development, while she managed financing and commercial operations. The advanced materials technology company we founded together had now become one of the hottest rising stars in the industry. Its valuation had multiplied more times than we could count. We both believed that continuing to climb and securing tangible resources for ourselves was the wisest path forward. As for romance, we would leave that to fate. At least for now, making money was far more interesting than dating. Chapter 12. At the Industry Summit's gala dinner that evening, Anna and I entered the banquet hall side by side as rising entrepreneurs. As expected, we soon came face to face with Makoto Ito and Willow Liu, who were attending as representatives of the established business elite. 5 years was enough time to change many things. That included the once arrogant pair of wealthy heirs before us who had treated other people's genuine feelings as part of a hunting game. Although they walked arm in arm, their body language revealed an unmistakable stiffness and emotional distance. Everyone in their social circle already knew that the marriage alliance between the Ito and Liu families had become a complete disaster. The game they had taken too far eventually came back to destroy them. Only after Anna walked away did Makoto belatedly realize that he had already fallen deeply for her. The woman he could never control became the unattainable love he could not forget, the one who got away. Even after getting married, he continued, obsessively searching for news about Anna. As for Willow, she had engraved the memory of the man who had been willing to give her everything before quietly, walking away to spare her any further pain into the deepest part of her heart. It had become a scar she could not bear to touch. Throughout the dinner, Makoto's gaze remained almost permanently fixed on Anna, filled with suppressed regret. Willow, meanwhile, stared distractedly at me from across the crowd. When the dinner ended, I stepped onto the terrace beside the hallway to get some fresh air. Willow came looking for me alone. She wore a bespoke evening gown and was still beautiful. However, her face now carried a weariness that had not been there 5 years earlier. George. Her voice trembled slightly as she called my name. I turned around with a wine glass in hand and gave her a polished, confident smile. Ms. Liu, it's been a long time. Or should I call you Mrs. Ito now? The words Mrs. Ito instantly drained the color from Willow's face. She stared at me. The man standing before her was more mature and composed than he had been 5 years ago. My perfectly tailored suit emphasized my tall, upright figure. Every movement now carried the natural authority of someone accustomed to being in charge. I was no longer the poor student who needed her handouts and connections. You've changed, she said with a bitter smile, her eyes beginning to redden. Have you been doing well these past 5 years? Very well, I replied. I adapted fairly quickly to the research environment in Germany, and Anna has done an excellent job managing our domestic operations. My tone was gentle, as though I were exchanging pleasantries with an ordinary business associate. There was no resentment and no emotional turmoil. Yet that absolute politeness and distance cut slowly into Willow's heart like a blunt knife. George back then. Willow stepped forward, seemingly wanting to grab my sleeve. Tears were already gathering in her eyes. Back then she began, her voice choking. Mrs. Ito. I calmly interrupted her and stepped half a pace back, avoiding her hand. I looked at her with clear eyes. My voice remained gentle, but the boundary in it was unmistakable. The dinner is over. You should head home. Makoto is probably still waiting for you. After all, you truly are another man's wife now. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to behave like this. I had said those same words on the night of our breakup 5 years ago. Back then, they had been part of my performance, a perfect final scene. Now they were simply a statement of fact and a clear boundary between us. With that, I put down my glass and gave her a polite nod. Then I turned and walked away without the slightest hesitation. At the end of the hallway, Anna was leaning against the wall waiting for me. She raised an eyebrow. Finished talking, finished. Let's go. We still have a meeting about a cross-border acquisition tomorrow morning. I walked over and together we headed toward the elevator. On the dimly lit terrace, Willow stood alone in the night breeze. She watched me walk toward another woman without the slightest hesitation. Finally, she covered her face and broke down sobbing.